Mad Science Films. I'm James Plumb, filmmaker, sexual astronaut, and this week I am joined by a very special guest, the director of such shorts as Portraits, The Pit, Santa Baby, and now feature film Wyvern Hill, aka Hollow, Mr. Jonathan Zaurin. Welcome,
Hello.
Jonathan. How's it going? You all good?
Yeah, I think so.
It's that stage of the process, is it? Okay, so everybody pack your snorkel, because this episode we're doing a deep dive into what it takes to make a low-budget indie horror film. I was lucky enough to see Wyvern Hill last month at a very exclusive screening, so thanks for the invite. I mentioned your short films earlier. At what point did you know that you were ready to kind of move from short films into a feature film production?
When we did our short films, it was always a project to do a feature. It was since Portraits essentially. We did Portraits and we're like, I think we could do a feature. But essentially, the issue is, being the very difficult Frenchman that I am, it was a case of getting a good script, a script that I thought we could do. And that was good. And the problem is the scripts we had were either script that we just couldn't do, it was impossible, or I wasn't too keen. That's more my own writing. My own writing, I wasn't too keen on. And then came along Keith, and then that started it all with Wyvern Hill, really.
Was it pretty much a fully formed script, or was it something where you worked on it a lot, you collaborated?
Well, Keith is a TV writer. And when I got the script, essentially, that's what it felt like. It was a good script. There was some good, really well-defined characters. And that's always the most important. But I wanted it to be a little bit more cinematic. What I did work on is making it a lot more horrific, visual, and quite grim. Because his script was the characters were beautiful, but it was quite shy on hurting them, essentially. And I was like, well, Keith, I think we need to hurt them. And there was a conversation in a McDonald's at lunch full of kids. And I was like, so, Keith, I think we need to stab him through the hand and then rip his face apart. And we're having that quite surreal conversation in a McDonald's surrounded with kids, which was quite odd. Keith is written for pretty much everything British TV. You can name it and he's done it. Doctor Who, EastEnders, whatever, but he'd never written horror before. And so the first thing I did was horror it up. And the second thing I did was to make it a bit more abstract. There was a lot of explanation as to what was actually going on, whether what she was seeing was real or not real. And I thought, well, we discussed it a lot with Keith, and I thought it's actually more interesting if we don't know, if we leave a lot of it unanswered. And interestingly, that's been one of the most successful parts of the film. A lot of people have been talking about how interesting it is that we don't really know, that it's a bit in the shadows, and that worked for me.
Definitely. I mean, I think, one of the things I enjoyed watching it was you respected the audience enough that they had to put the work in, to kind of, make connections. And I imagine, like I've read some of the earlier reviews that different people are going to take different things away from it, and I really like that. So, yeah. I mean, would you say that was kind of like the big change in the project as it went through redrafts of the script, was that it became, slightly more open-ended, if you like?
That was one of the big changes, yeah. I wanted something that would be essentially what Keith wrote. He wrote a soap opera slasher, and as a starting point, I thought that was really interesting, because actually, to be honest, I've never seen it. Part of the problem I have with modern horror, I'm going to be controversial now. Part of the problem I have with modern horror is that I never care about the characters. And I actually think it's on purpose. I think that they make horror films to not shock anyone. And the one way to shock people in horror film is to really make them care about characters and then do horrible things to them. That's one way of shocking your audience. And Keith was really good at doing that. Because of that soap opera aspect. And the way I've done it, I almost went a Paul Verhoeven kind of logic, where I thought, what I would find really interesting is if people feel like they're catching an episode of EastEnders, but that's the episode that goes completely wrong, right? And part of that for me was in the original script, there was a response as to who the killers actually were. what they were doing. We figured out that the character of Viviana was something completely different in the first draft of the script. And essentially, that didn't interest me as much as saying, look, we have someone whose sense of reality is shattering. And it's interesting, cinema being about point of view, that we share that point of view and we don't know what's real or what isn't. And so at the end of the film, you can, not too many spoilers, but you can sort of think whether it's all in our head or it's happening, but it's also partly in our head. There's all sorts of ways to look at it. And that came from cutting very small moments of the script, essentially.
Was there much tension between you and Keith in kind of redrafting the script, or was he happy for you to kind of take the initial idea and run with it?
The only moment of tension we had with Keith was with his agent. That was it. That was the only point of tension. Keith was really happy to collaborate. To be fair to him, he approached me before the project was even written. He was like, I've got an idea for a horror film, and would you do it? And I said, well, write it, and if I like it, let's see if we can do it. And it took him about a year to finish the first draft. But once he'd written the first draft, he was quite happy for us to work on it, work with it. Another thing I did was that I got some of the actors to rework their character, so rewrite their own lines.
Yeah.
Because I was quite interested in getting a sort of naturalistic acting, right? And the one easy way to do that is to get people to write parts for people, especially. So once we'd found our actors, I got, especially Pete, I got him to rewrite all his lines, essentially, so that they would sound like they come from him.
I mean, was anybody kind of pre-cast in your head? As soon as you had the script, you were like, oh yeah, okay, we're going to rewrite this for characters then?
Well, the thing with LBS Films, so my production company and solo production, Pete's production company, is that we sort of work as a family. So I'm going to sound like Vin Diesel. It's literally that. It's a family. And that means we always sort of work with the same people, with the same core of people. And we add to them with each project, but the core of people remains the same. So for me, it was obvious that Pete would be Connor. I knew that Mike would be the character that he is. I can't say too much about it, but and then Michael Sanchez with the music, I knew as well that was obvious. Everybody else sort of came through because we did some networking. We met some people. So Ben Manning, Pablo Raybould, and all these people. We wanted to work with them since we met them when we showed the Snarling, and that was perfect chance. Katie and Ollie are people that we worked with before. John Harrington, who plays the landlord, is someone we worked with before. So we tend to bring the same people because as far as working on low budget, when you know what you can get out of people and you know what they can do and you can trust them and they're reliable, because that's a big deal. If someone doesn't turn up on the low budget,
they know what to expect from your shoot. We're exactly the same. We work with a lot of the same people again. There's people who we haven't worked with again, and not naming names, but they were expecting a different experience from a low budget horror film than the one they got.
Yeah, and that happened to us as well. People that came on board, and then we went, let's not work with these people again. Quite a few, in fact, made a few enemies on the way. That's normal. I do believe, that for especially for low budget, the main thing, or no budget, is that you need to surround yourself with people that you can actually trust. You can trust them. Because if you get a composer or an actor and they don't deliver, or they don't turn up, or they're antisocial, or you take the risk that you're going to crumble the entire production.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always got to be like enthusiasm pips, like maybe talent, like that enthusiasm. Yeah, they've got to be able to get along with everybody else.
Absolutely.
No divas on a low budget shoot for them.
No. But the interesting thing is we also had to cast for 2-3 roles. Actually, we made casting calls. Jess, obviously, we found Ellie, and actually, I'm talking out of my ass. We didn't do a casting call for Ellie. We got her because Ben Manning said, "Oh, well, I've got a few people that auditioned for for our new film, and maybe you can have a look at them. Which is another good thing about doing casting calls and self tapes, is that it never really gets lost. And so we cast Viviana and Ellie that way. Pat was interesting because we actually had an actress that had already said yes. Friend of Keith, he wrote the script for her, and essentially because of family issues, she just couldn't do it. Nightmare with the agent, as always. I hate agents. So we did a casting call for Pat's role, and what we weren't expecting is that the response was massive, because there's so few casting calls for ladies of a certain age to be lead role.
Definitely.
We had a massive response. It took weeks to go through all that, but what was interesting about Pat is I looked at a picture and I went, that's really, really interesting, because she looked the part, and we'd already cast Viviana to play a younger version of her, so we needed to look like Viviana. And the interesting thing is, after a few communication via email, she said that she'd worked as a choreographer for the Jim Henson Company, and I was like, right, okay, that's a really interesting coincidence, because there is literally a whole thing about puppets in this film.
So that was a coincidence. That wasn't intentional.
No.
Wow.
That was total coincidence. And she has to read the script, and she did, and she was like, yeah, that is a really odd coincidence. And so that was obvious then. We thought, okay, that is the right person, and the reactions to her performance, proved that we were right to choose her.
The usefulness of like show reels, self tapes versus like auditions. As a director, what do you feel was like kind of most effective in casting the right people for the right role?
For me, really, you know what, I barely looked at show reels, because the problem with show reels is individuals are the worst judge of where they're good and where they're bad. And you see it all the time. You see it all the time. People go, oh no, I was terrible in that scene. You go, that's literally the scene that people are going to clap for. So I don't look at showreel, but what I did look at was the self-tape that they sent. Because that was interesting to me. Was I gave very little direction. I just gave them the same scene. And just ask them to go through it, and then see what they were doing with the character. One of the interesting things is some people were like, oh, I don't want to do this scene, I want to do another scene. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. At the time I took it as okay, that could be an interesting thing, that sort of individuality of, no, I'd rather do something else. But at the same time, it balanced as, yeah, boy, you're going to need to go through that scene at some point. So let's see it. Yeah, it was an interesting process. It was a long process. And obviously, I wasn't the only one in the process. I had an entire production crew. So my wife and the entire finances as well were invited to the group chat to see all those performances. So Todd and Reda and Jerome and all these people. So they would have a say in it, but Pat was unanimous.
Good. I was going to say, was, again, if you were allowing the producers, co-producers to have an input, a say into it, were you able to did you feel that you were able to kind of veto their decision and go, I'm the director, I'm making this call? Or was that not a conversation that you guys needed to have?
I mean, the thing with the production team is it's exactly the same as the cast. You need to surround yourself with people that you trust and who trust you. I had very, very little interference from the production team. I'd send them rushes and I'd send them scenes as they were edited and updates to where we were. But as long as they were reassured that we weren't being foolish with their money, they were quite happy to let us get on, which is part of what making low budget films is about. If you're going to make a low budget film and then all of a sudden you end up with a production team that's like Hollywood and they start imposing rules and what you can and can't do, then you might as well not make a low budget film. And this film was very low budget. We made it for £5,000, which is, I mean, you've seen the film, but that sounds insane that we've made this for £5,000 when you look at it.
Talking about it, it does look a huge amount more than the £5,000. And I think you've done something very smart, and it's definitely something that we try to do, which is, why bother going for more money if you know you can make it for as low amount as possible? Obviously, then your chances of success are much greater. So talking about the funding, how did the funding come about for the film, and did you pretty much have the budget in mind first, or did you have the amount of money first? Which came first?
The budget, when I looked at the script, I thought, I think we can do this for £3,000. Yeah. That was a mistake. It ended up costing more than that. But actually, to be honest, the way that I got the money is the interesting part. I'd already assembled the cast pretty much. I like to do the things the wrong way around. So I'd assembled my cast, and I said, look, I'm going to look for the money, be on hold. And I had a conversation with Jerome, who'd written portraits and funded some of our ventures before. And he said, look, COVID, I have a holiday fund, but I'm not going to use it because where are we going to go?
Yep.
I'll give it to you. And at first I was like, Jerome, you can't do that. He's got a family and all that. And they said, look, shut the fuck up and take it. So I did. And that sort of gave me a boost. And I thought, you know what, £1,000, that puts it a third of the way of what we want to do. So I'll just put this thing on Facebook. I'll see if people want to invest in that thing, and we'll see. And so I did. I said, look, this isn't a handout. We are literally offering a contract, so you will get a percentage of whatever profit that we are making, or we're looking to raise a little bit of money to do these films. And as usual, friends came forward and said, I can give you 100 quid, I can give you 50 quid, I can give you 200 quid. And that was great. And it raised the bar about 500 quid, I think. And then I had a message from a friend of a friend who I didn't know that well at the time. I mean, I knew them, I'd spoken to them, but it wasn't like we knew each other so well. And I had a message, and it was Younes, and he said, well, how much are you trying to raise? And I said, well, I'm trying to raise 3,000. And he said, well, how much have you got already? And I said, well, I got about 1.5. He said, so you need 1.5? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you can have it. I said, really? You sure? I mean, that's a lot of money. He was like, no, honestly, you can have it. I know I've seen Santa Baby. I think it's fantastic. And I think, you can have that money, and that's fine. And I was kind of blown away. So I sent a message to Keith. I said, we got our budget. And then I got up in the morning, and his twin brother had sent me a message. I said, I heard my brother gave you some money. And I said, oh, yeah, thinking, oh, God, here we go. What's going on? Yeah. He said, well, how much give you? I said, 1,500, expecting, oh, no, you can't have that money. And that was Eda. And he said, well, I tell you what, I'll just, if you want, I'll match it. So we had pretty much £5,000 to work with. We went a little bit over budget. I think they gave an extra 500 because we had some non-predicted costs, and they gave a bit of money for the DCP as well. So they've been golden. They've been amazing. It's been amazing to have them on board. And I'm hoping that we can make them a little bit of money so that we can do the next one.
But I mean, I think that's what's really important. What you've done really well, and which I wish more filmmakers would do, is by keeping it so low, you have got so much more chance of making that money back and keeping your investors happy, rather than going, okay, guys, yeah, but I've also brought on this other guy who's bringing 5,000, and then of course the chances are kind of just evened out, and it becomes much more complicated. So, I mean, that's brilliant. And yeah, as you say, I mean, if your budget is 5,000, touch wood, obviously, but you've made it so much easier for yourself to make that money back.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much people who watch your channel know about this industry, or how many filmmakers have done this, but it sounds easy to make money on a £5,000 film, and it really isn't. This is an industry that is riddled with people who are trying to get a percentage out of you, yeah, who are trying to make you spend money on things that you might not need to spend money on.
Yeah.
who are taking cuts and getting you to pay for things, and it's full of that. It's absolutely filled to the brim with that, and it's so difficult to make your money on even on £5,000.
We've had some private chats, which we won't go into here
Yeah.
about all of that. And yeah, actually, we've been through similar stuff in the past, especially with our first two films. And there's a episode which I forget the number, but I'll drop it here, where we talk about exactly those hidden costs of distributors and other people who will, kind of like pick away at any chance of making a profit on a film. So yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, talking about, I think each project's different, but on Wyvern Hill in particular, where did you find that the majority of your budget kind of went to in the end then?
A lot of it went on some of the special effects, for sure, because that always costs money.
Yeah.
Transportation was a big deal, because we made the well, I don't know if it was stupid. I think it adds production value, but we made the choice that we wouldn't make a film on one location. So transporting everything and everyone costs money. And then obviously Pat came from Spain, so we had to keep her here for 3.5 weeks. So that cost a lot of money. And then feeding people. Essentially, that's where it went. And a lot. I spent quite a few bits and bobs on kit and costume and props. Essentially trying to maximize all that so that everything becomes about production value. I know people like to use the words production value, but until you've done this on a very low budget, I don't think you realize how it is in absolutely everything. In the lenses, in the sound, in the sets, in the costumes, in the props. That's all production value. And so you can maximize all your production value by literally just injecting money in a little bit of everything where it's really important. But that means a lot of pre-production work, where you have to separate in the pre-production what's important and what's not so important. One of the things you read a lot is people say, no, the devil's in the detail and you have to focus on the detail. And that's true, but you can't focus on the detail before you've got the big picture. And the big picture is where the production value is. So part of that was we invested in anamorphic lenses, because obviously if you want that cinematic look, one of the easy ways to get a cinematic look is to shoot in 239, and get those flares, and we invested in lighting and in the drone as well, because we had a couple of drone shots that we couldn't avoid, even though I'm not a massive fan of drone shots, but
I think we've gone past peak drone now, haven't we? But
yeah.
To be fair, it wasn't intrusive in Wyvern Hill. No. I thought, I noticed a few, but it felt part of it. So yeah.
We made sure it was always about the story and about the region, about Herefordshire as well. That's all our drone shots had to be there for the story's sake and the atmosphere. But we never thought, let's just put a drone shot here. And also, I think we use them in a sort of different way. One of the things that annoys me is those opening credits with drone shots. Right, let's just open on drone shots all the time, and it goes on forever, and it's those establishing shots that go on for 5 minutes, and you're why?
It's because they spent the money on the drone shot, so they got to get their money's worth. They feel, yeah.
It's a tool. It's a tool for the storytelling, and that's how I wanted to use it, as a tool, as another tool.
So, in terms of spending the money from a budget point of view, is there anything after doing Wyvern Hill that you feel you do differently?
Well, it's so little money. I don't know how differently we could have done it. No, I think it was spread evenly. I mean, part of the thing of making a film on such a low budget is we worked on profit share. So all the actors had a percentage of the profit, all the technicians had a percentage of the profit, and we're very straightforward and upfront about it. We never promised any upfront money, and we were clear. We said, look, we're on the same boat on this. That's the first step. Is if you're interested in making this film, this is what you're going to have to accept. Is I'm not making money. My production team isn't making money until we all make money. And then we stand to either all make money together or make no money whatsoever together, but we've made a project that we believe in. So that wasn't a massive spend. Feeding people is a big deal, and I think we did that really well. Every day we were very well fed.
If it keeps them happy, then that's gold.
Yeah,
keeping people well fed.
I get the point that a lot of people are saying that, if you're going to use talent, you need to pay for it, and I agree. But I see profit share as being that you will pay for it if you ever make some money out of it. Because if we had to pay up front all these actors, we'd talk about a budget that's 100 times what we spent, and we couldn't raise that. And I also believe working on profit share means that you basically assemble a team who they really believe in the project. They want to be a part of it because they think it's an interesting project. That's not
that's something
about the money.
Yeah, that's something that going forward again you consider doing as well, profit sharing.
If I could pay people up front, that's what I'd do, because as someone who also works professionally in the industry, I don't know how many times I'd work for profit share, if I'm completely honest. It depends on the project. And if you can pay people up front, then absolutely. I think the secret of that is honesty. If you go at it honestly and you go, look, this is what it is. There's no hidden truth in what I'm saying to you. You're not going to be paid up front. However, you're going to have a percentage of the profit, which in a sense, it's a gamble. You're standing to maybe make much more money than if you had a flat fee or no money at all.